Chidinma woke up before the sun, like always. She swept the compound, cooked breakfast, got the kids ready, packed their lunch, cleaned the house, washed clothes, and still had more to do. She barely sat down all day, but when Obinna came home, he didn't notice any of it. He dropped his bag, looked around, and scoffed. "You're just a housewife, Chidinma. You've done nothing with your life." His words hit harder than a slap. She forced a smile, nodded quietly, and served his food. That night, when everyone was asleep, she sat alone in the kitchen. The hum of the fridge was the only sound as tears rolled down her cheeks. Was this really her life? Just cooking and cleaning, invisible and unvalued? She stared at her reflection in the dark window and whispered to herself, "Is this all I was born for?" Something inside her broke, or maybe something just began to wake up. That Saturday evening, Obinna had guests over, his rich, loud friends with shiny watches and loud laughs. Chidinma cleaned the whole house from morning, cooked 3 different meals, made sure the children stayed out of the way. When the doorbell rang, she quickly wiped her hands and went to open it, smiling politely. But when Obinna introduced her, he didn't say, "My wife." He laughed and said, "This is Chidinma. She helps around," just like that, like she was the house help. She kept her head down and served drinks, moving from one guest to another. As she passed behind them, she heard one of the men say, "My wife just got back from Dubai. Women these days should be making moves." Obinna joined in. "Exactly. Not everyone wants to marry a woman who just sits at home all day." They all laughed. Chidinma froze. The tray in her hands felt heavier. Her throat tightened, but she didn't say a word. She simply nodded and walked back to the kitchen, her heart burning. She sat on the stool, fists clenched, tears threatening to fall, but she held them in. She had heard insults before, but this one cut deeper, in front of strangers, in her own home. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, not yet, but deep inside, something was shifting. Something was preparing to rise. Late that night, when the house was quiet and Obinna was snoring in bed, Chidinma tiptoed to the corner of the room. She bent down and slowly pulled out a small, worn notebook from under the mattress. Her secret journal. No one knew about it. Not her children, not even her closest friend. It was her hidden world, the only place she could be fully herself. She sat on the floor, the dim light from her phone screen glowing softly. The cover of the book was scratched and old, but inside, it was alive. Page after page filled with her handwriting. Ideas, lessons, speeches she wrote in her head but never got to say. Thoughts about life, motherhood, dreams, quotes she loved, plans she once believed in. As she flipped through, she paused at a page where she had once written in big letters, "One day, I will teach children who feel forgotten. One day, I will speak and women will listen." Her fingers traced the words like they were sacred. A lump rose in her throat. She had forgotten this part of herself, the part that dreamed, the part that believed she could be more than just someone's wife or someone's mother. That night, something inside her stirred, something powerful. She didn't know how or when, but one thing was clear. She couldn't keep this version of herself hidden forever. One afternoon, Chidinma walked down the dusty road to Mama Ada's compound, her heart beating fast. "Please, can I borrow your old chalkboard?" she asked softly. Mama Ada looked surprised, but handed it over with a kind smile. "What for?" Chidinma just smiled and said, "You'll see." The next morning, she carried the chalkboard to a quiet spot under the big mango tree near the edge of the village. She brought some chalk, a small stool, and her heart full of hope. 5 children came, barefoot and curious. She greeted them warmly, wiped the board clean, and began teaching them the alphabet, numbers, little stories, just like she used to dream. By the second week, word had spread. 15 children now sat on mats and old plastic chairs under that mango tree. Some came hungry, some came shy, but they came. Chidinma welcomed them all with patience and love. Her voice was calm but full of passion. She told no one at home, not a word. Each day after her house chores, she'd sneak away with her notebook and chalk. It became her secret joy, her quiet rebellion. On the 3rd week, an elder from the community stopped by and watched her teach. He didn't say much, just nodded slowly with respect. Under that tree, with no salary, no title, and no support, Chidinma felt alive again. For the first time in years, she wasn't invisible. She was doing what she was born to do. One evening, Obinna came home earlier than usual. Chidinma had just returned from the mango tree, dusty and tired but smiling to herself. She had no idea that one of his friends had seen her teaching. "Chidinma!" he barked. She froze. He held up her notebook, the one she always hid under the mattress. "So this is what you've been doing? Teaching like a village clown under a tree?" He laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was cruel. "You? A teacher? Who wants to learn from you? You didn't even finish university." She stood still, gripping the edge of the table, her heart pounding. Then he did the unthinkable. He tore the notebook in half, page after page of her dreams, her lessons, her private thoughts, ripped and scattered on the floor. She wanted to scream, to cry, to beg him to stop, but she didn't. She just stared, lips pressed tight, holding back the storm inside her. Obinna thought he had ended something, that tearing the pages would tear her spirit too. But he was wrong. As she quietly bent down to pick up the pieces, something in her chest burned, not with sadness this time, but with fire, a fire she had never felt before. He thought he had silenced her, but all he did was wake up the woman who was no longer afraid. Months passed, and Chidinma kept teaching under the mango tree, even without her notebook. She now had over 20 children coming regularly, and even some parents stayed to listen. One day, a woman from a local NGO heard about her and visited quietly. She watched Chidinma teach with nothing but chalk, passion, and a smile, and was moved. A few weeks later, Chidinma received an invitation to speak at a women's gathering in Jos. At first, she thought it was a mistake. Me, speak. But the letter had her name on it. They even offered to pay for her transport, and it came with a small speaking fee. It was the first time someone paid her for what she carried in her heart. Nervous but determined, she stood on that stage in Jos with shaky hands and a strong voice. Her topic, raising strong children without riches. She didn't use big grammar. She spoke from her soul, about love, discipline, faith, and the power of a mother's voice. Someone in the crowd recorded it on their phone and posted it online. 2 days later, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Hundreds of shares, thousands of comments. Who is this woman? This gave me chills. I'm crying. Chidinma sat in her small kitchen, staring at the screen in disbelief. Her voice, once mocked, once silenced, was now echoing across the country. After that viral video, everything changed. Calls started coming in, first from small women's groups, then from big organizations. Everyone wanted to hear the woman who spoke with so much truth and heart. Her name started spreading across towns and cities. Posters with her picture appeared on walls. Guest speaker, Mrs. Chidinma Okeke. She was invited to Abuja for a live radio interview. Then a television station called. When she walked into the studio, the producers greeted her with smiles and respect. She sat under bright lights, wearing her simple Ankara gown, and spoke about motherhood, strength, and dignity. Her voice was calm, her words clear, and the nation listened. Then came the moment no one expected. Obinna was at a bar with his friends when one of them pointed at a large billboard outside. "Wait, is that your wife?" Obinna turned, and there she was, bold, beautiful, confident, standing tall next to the words, "National Speaker, Chidinma Okeke, Voice of the Mothers." He choked on his drink. His face turned pale. The same woman he once mocked for just sitting at home was now a national figure. His friends looked at him differently now, with surprise, maybe even respect. At home, Chidinma carried herself with quiet confidence. She didn't need to say much. Her success was now louder than any insult he had ever thrown. The hall was packed. Cameras flashed. Music played softly in the background. Chidinma stood backstage, dressed in a bold, beautiful Ankara gown, her head held high. Her heart beat fast, but her eyes were steady. She was no longer the woman who cried alone in the kitchen. She was about to receive a national award. When her name was called, the whole room clapped. She walked up to the stage, past rows of governors, leaders, and dignitaries. A gold plaque was handed to her. National Mother Leader and Educator. For a moment, she just stared at it, her hands slightly shaking. Then she turned to face the crowd. Taking a deep breath, she stepped up to the microphone. "They said I was just a housewife," she began, her voice strong and clear. "But while I cooked and cleaned, I was raising leaders. While I washed clothes, I was building dreams. I was building a nation from my kitchen." The room went silent, then exploded in applause. Some women in the crowd wiped tears from their eyes. Her words hit home, deep and honest. That moment wasn't just about the award. It was about every woman who had ever been silenced, dismissed, or overlooked. Chidinma had turned pain into purpose, and the whole nation was now watching her shine. One rainy afternoon, the doorbell rang. Chidinma opened the door and saw Obina standing there, holding a small bouquet of flowers. His eyes were red, and his voice shook as he spoke. Chidinma, I didn't know your worth. I was wrong to treat you like that. Please, can we have a second chance? For a moment, she just looked at him. The man who once called her just a housewife, who tore her dreams apart, now standing there with tears and regret. But something inside her had changed forever. She smiled, not the sad, broken smile he used to see, but a quiet, strong one. Thank you, she said softly. Thank you for the insults, the pain. They gave me my voice. She stepped past him, feeling taller, stronger, free. She didn't need his forgiveness to know her value anymore. She had found it herself, through every struggle, every tear, every silent night. Obina watched her walk away, realizing the woman he thought he controlled was now unstoppable. And Chidinma, she was ready to write the next chapter of her life, on her own terms. The sun was setting as Chidinma stood on the big stage, facing a sea of 10,000 women. Their eyes were shining, some filled with tears, others full of hope. She took a deep breath and spoke from her heart. You are not just anything, she said, her voice steady and warm. You are powerful beyond measure. You don't need anyone to tell you who you are or what you can do. Inside each of you is a fire, a light that can change the world. The crowd erupted in applause. Women stood up clapping, some wiping away tears, others shouting yes and amen. Her journey, from the quiet, hurt housewife to a national leader, was now a story that touched millions. She smiled, knowing this was more than just her story. It was theirs too. Every woman who felt small, invisible, or unheard could hear her words and believe them. In that moment, Chidinma wasn't just a speaker. She was a movement, a voice for every woman ready to rise.